this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, Stevie the Guide here on the banks of the Guadalupe River. It's 5 a.m. Good morning to you. Doing my little thing here in Kerrville, Texas, and I'm happy to be alive. Happy to be alive. And you know, what can I say? I told you yesterday about this friend of mine's mom who had been very ill, and she passed away yesterday afternoon at about 5:30. Bless her heart. And I learned something, even though I didn't know this woman. I'd never met her before, but I just heard reports from her family members. And by all accounts, she doggedly hung on to life, and was squeezing the last drop out of this life and this little divine spark in her, even though the body was completely destroyed. You know, there was this spark in her that wouldn't let go for the longest time. And God bless her family members. It's hard taking care of a terminally ill patient for months, but she had this wisdom, and it's oftentimes when people get close to this graduation day that they begin to impart all kinds of wisdom, and they begin to really work hard. They know that the time limit's up, and they're trying to repair things, repair relationships, get last minute things done. I don't know. It was inspiring in a way, and like I said, I was not there. I never met her before, but it was just another example. When somebody passes away, when somebody graduates out of this body, all right, and they go to the next life. It's inspiring in a way. It inspires me, and I talked yesterday about death as motivation, but let's talk today about life and birth and how it all gets going. What is this game of life? And it intrigues me so much, and I was reading a couple of things, but basically you're a soul, a divine spirit, a divine spark. They talk about spirit or soul as a fire or a spark of life, a light that shines, and it's a pure light that comes from God, the cosmos, the universe, prana. Whatever you want to call it. I think any name for this organizing force, this creator of the universe, any name is inadequate, okay? So call it what you will. If you're trying to define something as big as that in English or any other language, it's inadequate. But basically, you come into this life as a spirit, and you're given this body. Guess what? The divine spark is not your body, that loner. This thing here is just a loner vehicle, and thank God, you do your best to try to protect it and care for it, because it's what carries around the divine spark. But here, as I see it, folks, here's the exercise that we go through in life. We come in, our divine spark is placed into this physical body, which is basically made of earth, okay? It's the components, the same components that everything else is made out of, except the divine spark is put into it, all right? And it's bright and shiny, and when children come into the world, they have this intuition and this knowing. Their vibration is very high, and just as a reminder, what drives this little divine spark here is raising the vibration of humanity, trying to create a harmonic, higher vibration that's somehow going to push us over the edge. It's going to bring down that wall of Jericho. As the collective vibration gets higher and higher, something's going to happen. I tend to think it's what they refer to as the second coming of Christ, or Christ consciousness. That's what I believe is going to happen. And the more of us that can have a higher vibration and spread that, it's infectious. Anyway, so you come into the world, you've got this divine spark. It's placed inside this body. And when you're young, you're wide open with wonder and possibility, and the right brain intuitive is working. That inner child is free to roam. And, you see children, they're just willing to try things and have a go at stuff. And like, wow, I wonder what will do, I wonder if I sing this song or play this tune or, experiment on whatever it is. They just have this spark about them that's so intriguing. That's why we love children. They're so exciting. And but very quickly, this is how the game works. You're going through a basic training exercise here. So your divine spark comes into this physical body with all its limitations, and this mind, this left brain mind that sort of drives it. It's the guiding force. You got the boat and you got the motor, and the sail or the sailboat. The sailboat is or actually, think about this for a second. Anyway, I don't want to get lost in that story. I'm going to tell you a story here in a minute, but basically, you come into this body with this divine, spark of life. It's a sliver of God. It is one of the little waves on the ocean, all right? But you are part of the entire ocean. You have this, a connection to all things. You have a connection to the Creator, who is the organizing force of everything. But you forget. Okay, you forget. Why do you forget? It's because that's the exercise. That's this blind exercise. You come in, you have the spark, but then, and the body has limitations, and society starts to mess with you. The minute you get here, they're spanking you on the butt and sticking needles in you and telling you where to go and what to do, and it's cold, You come out of the womb, you're freezing. They got to wrap you all up. I mean, you've got all these challenges, just like in a basic training program, all right? And then, from 0 to about 6 or 7, this is when a lot of the supernatural things happen in a person's life. They have a imaginary friend. They see things. They have premonitions. They have these out-of-body experiences. And I've learned this from 2 years in being the host of the Forbidden Discussions, which we talk about all manner of different things. People have these experiences when they're little, but they get shut down about the time they're 6 or 7 years old. They're shut down and they're forced into the mold, all right? And so as I see it, ladies and gentlemen, moms and dads, boys and girls, the way I see this is that you come in with this beautiful divine spark that's full of possibility and imagination, and then it gets shut down and you get shoved into the cattle chute. And you're trained, and you shall speak and not speak when spoken to. Be quiet, sit in the chair, learn something, all right? But really, you have all this divine information that you enter here with, all right? But it gets squashed, it gets shut down, and you start learning, training in all its various uncomfortable forms, all right? And you go through this process until all those wild possibilities are shut down. Well, so the exercise here is, to go through that when, that divine spark, though it may be, have cold water thrown on it, and it may be shut down and contained and corralled. It's there, all right? It's in there, all right? And so your job, even if you get to be 60 years old, your job is to identify that you have that divine spark within you, that the Creator gave you, all right? And that's your job. And then to realize it is part of that organizing force of the entire universe, that divine intelligence, and you have access to it. But you have to uncover what's been covered up, All right, you're buried in the world, bombarding you with all this stuff. If you picture the sun, bright and shining with unlimited energy, and then you start covering it up with all kinds of stuff, until at some point there's just a few little rays of light coming out of it. Well, the sun's still in there. I love the story about the solid gold Buddha in Thailand. All right, and once upon a time there was a solid gold Buddha, and but there was a conquering army coming, so they covered it all up with plaster, and then the place got conquered, and this thing looked like just an ordinary plaster Buddha. Nobody, generations went by and nobody remembered that there was a solid gold Buddha underneath this plaster casing. And then one day, after years of rain and cold and whatnot, there was a little crack, and one of the monks was sitting there praying and meditating. He looked down and he saw a sliver of gold coming out of that plaster Buddha, and they uncovered it piece by piece and cleared off that gold Buddha, that shining gold. And that's why they talk about in alchemy turning lead into gold. Well, instead of turning base metal into gold, spiritually speaking, what you're doing is trying to turn this lead, personality, this spirit, and uncover it and transmute it into the gold, the shining gold that it is. All right, and stuff gets me excited because it opens up the possibility for so many things. The quote of the day, I've got 2 or 3 quotes of the day that I dug up, and let's see here. Robin Williams says, "You're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it." And my interpretation of that is oftentimes when people are imaginative, they're called crazy or mad, and they don't follow the pattern. They have this this spark of craziness, madness. You're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. That's from Robin Williams, and it says. Each of us has a spark of life inside of us, and our highest endeavor ought to be to set off that spark in one another. All right. Now that's a great quote. All right, that's a great quote. That's from Kenny Ausubel. Kenny Ausubel. I don't know who he is, but it's a great quote, Kenny. Each of us has a spark of life inside of us, and our highest endeavor ought to be to set off that spark in one another. And you can only do that really by finding that spark within yourself. That's why, I talk about, hanging around or being in the grocery store line and talking to the people in line or wherever I am in the world, and look at people, and it looks like their spark is gone. It looks like their spark is not there, and you look them in the eye, say, "Hey," and you get their attention. And they go, "Hmm," and you go, "Have I told you that I loved you today?" And you will see that spark come back into their eyes. All right, when you tell them that love is the fuel. Love gives the permission. Love tells them they're okay. Love does so many things, try to help each other. And when you see the spark of creativity and imagination, encourage it in each other. And because we're so discouraged by of using our own original thought, all right, that we're saying, no, that's not the way we do it. We do it this way, stupid. All right. There's a wonderful man that's doing a series here in Kerrville at the Unity Church called Rhythms of the Universe. And his name is Garland O'Quinn. And Garland's I'd guess Garland's 72, 75, something like that. He's a wonderful old guy. He's my good friend. And And Garland was a right brain intuitive. He had a hard time, with left brain logical stuff when he was growing up. He was labeled dyslexic, a slow learner, and all that. But he really has a deep, fascinating, talented mind. And it's just that his strength is more on the right brain. And I've said it again and again, and it's kind of a platform I'm on, really, is that the most oppressed people on this planet are not women or black people or gays or anybody else. The most oppressed people group on this planet are the right brain intuitives, the people who operate freely out of their right brain, and or not, because most people, like me, I've been through a conditioning process that tells me don't use that intuitive part. Don't use that. All right, do what we teach you, not what you think up on your own. All right. And thereby, let me tell you, the establishment likes that because it's easier to herd sheep than it is to herd cats. Okay, cats are not herdable, all right, and cats are intuitive, cats are spontaneous, cats do whatever the hell they want, all right, and the establishment does not like trying to herd cats, all right. They're trying to shove you into a certain mold, and so your right brain intuitive gets crippled. As when you get born, and I'll use this metaphor because I like it. When you get born, it's very much like, imagine yourself. Let me turn it this way. Let's say there's a knock on the door. You go there and open the door, and it's Oprah Winfrey with a big camera crew and a bunch of fanfare. And she congratulates you. You've won a contest, a worldwide contest. She has a new show called Start Her Up. And she informs you that you've won this contest, and she puts you into a big limousine, and you cruise off to the nearest airport. You go into a big hangar, and inside that hangar is a brand new G650 aircraft. It's the coolest, about the coolest private jet that a person can own. Only the richest people can buy this thing. And it goes like Mach 2 or something, It's the most luxurious, private, fastest, long-range private jet on the planet. And all the really rich people want this, all right? And so Oprah informs you that you've won this thing. It's yours. But there's a couple of hitches in the deal. You can't sell it for money. All right, you can't sell the G650 for money. And B, nobody can fly it but you. All right, no one's allowed to fly you around. You cannot hire a pilot. All right. You own the aircraft. It's in that hangar. You get free fuel, free maintenance, and free education for the rest of your life. But nobody can fly it but you. All right. So she takes off. She gives you a big hug, says congratulations, and now you're the TV show. All right. And what you do with this giant, beautiful private aircraft is up to you. And you have all the capability to fly this thing, but chances are, especially with no flight training, you're not going to be cranking that bad boy up to head for Singapore this afternoon. Okay, ain't going to happen. It's a complicated machine. It's got, it's going to take you quite a while just to learn how to start the thing. All right, and it's a massive amount of education. And this is the way that I equate life. You've been placed here. You've got all this intelligence. You got this complicated body. You've got this, very unusual landscape to move around through, and you've got to figure out how it works. And some people, if we came back in a year and Oprah Winfrey came back to check on your progress, what would she find? Would she find that you're sitting inside that aircraft using it as an apartment, watching television and drinking beer, and you haven't attempted to learn how to use it at all? Or would she find a dedicated, aspiring flight student who is now learning the different components piece by piece and uncovering the magic that is this aircraft? And it's lifelong learning. You ask any pilot that knows how to do this. They're constantly going to training. There's upgrades, and just to figure out how the thing runs, how to fly it around, then to figure out the navigation of it, and how to set a heading. And it takes years to figure this out, and only the most dedicated people know how to do this. And I submit to you that you've been given a G650 here. You've been given this body, this life, this environment. And oftentimes people get to a certain amount of learning, and then they're like, I can't learn anymore. I can't do it anymore. I keep what I got. They make a little money and they settle. All right. Even though their right brain intuitive is aware of a higher vision, and it talks to them now and then. And it wants that inner child wants to come out and play, and there's, we forget that there's much more to do, much more to have, more juice out of life, and to uncover the things in our inner spark, that spark of life, to uncover it and to learn how to fly that aircraft to its fullest. The best pilots, they can do maneuvers and stuff. They fly effortlessly. Other pilots, they struggle with a single engine Cessna, because that's where you're going to have to start if you're going to learn how to fly that G650. You got to start on a little Cessna or something, a little trainer, and just learn how to fly that. You ain't going to be starting on the big jet, all right? And so it's this constant lifelong learning of how it works. And every minute that you own this G650, you need to be in a state of learning if you want to get the most performance out of it. All right. And learning how to use the brain, learning how to uncover that divine spark, and learning all the things that give you higher nutrition, that give you higher thoughts, that give you deeper wisdom, the shining of the light around you is and bringing up the frequency, the vibrational frequency in the other people. Each of us, what does it say? Each of us has a spark of life inside of us, and our highest endeavor ought to be to set off that spark in one another. All right, our highest endeavor, and that is an inspiring thing. And when you find someone like that, you find somebody who sets off that spark, hang around them. All right, I love this quote. This is by who is this? Alice Munro. Yeah, Alice Munro. Alice says, he never wanted to be away from her. She had the spark of life. He never wanted to be away from her. She had the spark of life. Hey, you ever find someone like that? You find someone that has this spark of life, and you can commingle with that. You can spend time talking to that, and someone who's willing to shine on you and encourage your light to shine. There's nothing more beautiful than that, because it is that divine spark that brings the beauty and the majesty to everything. All right, and do what you can to find those people. And I always go back to Howard Thurman's quote, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. All right, and you see so many dead people walking around like zombies, and I'm guilty myself. I'm talking to myself. I can be depressed. I can be melancholy. I can be have a defeatist attitude. But it's just so beautiful when you actively try to uncover this. And you know, you get covered, folks, in ways that you don't realize, you don't realize how covered up the divine spark is. I was once, I had a very interesting encounter with a woman. I can't remember her name. I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I have a hard time with names. I can remember stuff that happened when I was 4 years old. I can remember poetry. I can remember all kinds of stuff, but I have a real hard time with names, and it's not because I don't care. But it just, you know, I work at it. You could tell me your name and I'd probably forget in 2 minutes. And so I have to work at remembering people's names. Anyway, I met this wonderful woman at a place called Laity Lodge. And here outside of Kerrville, near the town of Lakey, there is the H.E. Butt Foundation Camp. If you shop at H.E.B. food stores, you'd be interested to know that the part of the money goes to this gorgeous 2,000-acre ranch that's on the banks of the Frio River. It actually has 3.5 miles of Frio River Canyon, high-walled canyon. It's some of the purest, most gorgeous water in Texas. And the H.E. Butt Foundation years ago bought this place. Howard Butt bought it, and he had a dream to create an environment where people could come basically for free and you know, enjoy the beauty of the nature and the natural environment of the hill country. Because why? Because it raises the vibration. It makes them feel closer to God. Howard Butt of H.E.B. food stores, when he was a little boy growing up in Texas, he used to ride his bicycle after school and deliver the groceries at his mom's grocery store, and that's how H.E.B. got started. And Howard, little Howard, used to go out to the ranches around Kerrville and Mountain Home and elsewhere. And when he was near the water, near the cypress trees, and out in nature, he felt closer to God. He felt closer to that divine spark within him. It resonates when you're in nature, all right? And he dreamed of one day owning a place where he could bring city people out into this kind of nature and raise their closeness with God, their feeling of being alive and awakening and uncovering that divine spark. Because it's somehow, and I've found this all over the world, in the ocean, the mountains, you know, here in the Texas Hill Country, when you wander out in nature, away from your urban environment, away from your issues, you feel connected to nature, and it helps you to realize you are a part of the whole, the creative force that made all this. You are a part of that. You are a creator, made in the image of God. And they ain't talking about that body you're wearing. When they say you're made in the image of God, you know, they're not talking about your body, baby. All right, that is, you know, they got that off some used car lot or something. But made in the image of God means that you have a part of the divine spark that created everything. And most of us have just forgotten. They've been covered up with all these things. But anyway, what got me off on all that was I worked for a while at Laity Lodge there in Lakey, and every month I would go for 3 nights and be the assistant guest services director. And so it allowed me to talk with all manner of wonderful, beautiful people. And this one day I was driving this woman out to one of the lodges, and she was a psychologist, and her specialty was dealing with war veterans, and they guys who had been in the war, and they'd seen horrible things in the war. They had done horrible things, and they had post-traumatic stress. And so I got to talking to her. She was a very fine woman, and she told me that after she sort of worked her a little process on them, her psychological stripping of the onion skins, let's say, and once she sort of uncovered them, what really bothered 90% of these men is not what they experienced in the war or in the military. That was not the core of what troubled these guys. What troubled them most often was their broken relationship with their father. That's what troubled them, and that's what made them feel small and weak and inadequate and unworthy of life. And it's a crippling thing that's universal. All right, and this is why in ancient culture, especially, you have these rites of passage where the young, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy has got to go out on a quest of some kind. He's got to, take a knife and go out and, kill the lion, or he's got to go on a vision quest, or he's got to go survive in the wild, or, I've seen, in National Geographic television, they had these guys jumping off a platform with vines tied to their feet, and seeing who could come the closest to the ground without hitting their face. All right, this is a little extreme, but the point is that young men want to be accepted and feel that they are a valued tribe member. And as culture has gone on, we don't have that as nearly as much as we need it. And this is why a lot of young men who are fatherless children, they wind up, going to a tribe of some kind, a gang, or find some male leadership somewhere that's going to tell them that they are okay. And so there I was with this psychologist woman, and she's telling me all this, and she said, "Hey, would you like to come and take a free session? I'll be giving away some hours while I'm here this weekend, and would you like to come?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love that." And so I go and I sit down with her, and she puts me in this deeply relaxed state. And I would call any kind of process like that a type of hypnosis. And hypnosis, in my opinion, is just being deeply relaxed enough that the right brain intuitive can come forward. And that's my take on it. Anyway, she puts me in this deeply relaxed state. And she says, "Okay, now I'm going to ask you something, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind." And I said, "Okay." And she says, "When was the first time you felt separated from your father?" And I was like, I remembered instantly. I had a memory of something I had never thought about, that I recall ever thinking about. And it was when I was about, 5 or 6 years old, and my father had come home from work, and this was like, you have to appreciate, this was like the most exciting moment of my day when my dad would come home. And I was a, energetic little kid, full of life, and my dad had come home from a long day at work, and he's having a scotch, and his vibration was much lower than mine. And he was, just happy to sit in his easy chair and rest. And I came running in there, "Dad!" And I ran and I hugged him and jumped on him, gave him a big kiss on the cheek, and he was like, I was basically assaulting his tranquil little space. And so he peels me off of him, and he sets me in front of him. and he says, look, son, he says, you're old enough now to know that men don't hug and kiss, okay? They shake hands like this. And so, how you doing? Good to see you, son. See you later. And I was like, okay, Dad, and it didn't cognitively set in at the time. But basically what happened at that moment was I lost my license to hug and kiss my dad. And I never did that. I never kissed him until I was well into my 30s. And it's only because I saw my brother do it, and I felt sort of permission again. But there was a shutting down that went on there. And so when I told the therapist this, then I tried to move on to something else. And it was it started to dawn on me that it was a painful memory. And so I started to move something else. She goes, oh, no, stay right there. Stay with your dad and imagine him in your mind's eye in his easy chair with his drink. And, there he is. Can you see him? And I got my eyes closed. I say, yes, I can see him. And he's in full living color, and you can see him right there. And I say, yes. So in your mind's eye, picture, that he's just a regular guy trying to make a living and trying to do the right thing. And he has his own emotions, his own set of things. He's a flawed character, just like everyone is. Can you see that? And I say, yes, I see that. And she says, okay, now fade in your mind's eye, fade that picture of your father down to black and white. Okay. It's not a color picture anymore in your mind. It's black and white. Can you see that? I say, yes, I can see that. And she says, okay, now there's that black and white picture of your dad, and over his right shoulder, notice a color picture coming into a view, and it's a picture of Jesus. Can you see him? And I said, yes, I can. Right over your dad's right shoulder, your dad's black and white, and Jesus is coming in full color right over his shoulder. And can you see him? And I say, yes, I can see him. And she goes, okay, understand that Jesus, really, Christ is your real father. And Christ always wants to see you. And Christ always will allow you to jump up in his lap and hug him and hold him. And he's always there, always interested, always wanting to be a part of your life. And you're never separated, never with Christ. And your dad, Christ is your same father as your earthly father. It's the same father that he has. And sometimes we forget. But that is your true connection, your true birth creator father. That is who you look to for this type of energy. But at that time, you were shut down by your dad's, earthly demeanor, let's say. And I'm telling you, folks, that stuck with me. That was a beautiful technique of learning how to uncover some of this little light that had been shut off in me that day. And with so many different little incidents in our lives that shut us down, that shut us up, that keep us from letting that light shine. And a lot of times it's a connection with a father or mother that we want so much. Forget the nice homes and the jewels and the trips and the education, the medical care. What we want as children, most of all, to have that connection, that emotional spark connection with the human beings that we love, that acceptance that we're okay and we're part of the whole. And there's an illusion here on earth that we have to navigate through. Come shiny, go through, get covered up. But the exercise is, as you come through, you realize what's happened, and then you begin to uncover those little pieces that got covered up before, long before sometimes. And letting that light shine more and more. It's an exercise, a methodical exercise that's got to be, if you really want to function at 100%, if you truly want that vibration to come up all the way that it possibly can, all right? If you want to throttle that fucking plane and take off in it, and cruise it, at Mach 2, you want to really fly that G650, all right? You've got to be a student, all right? You've got to understand how this thing works, all right? And you've got to get all the trash out of your fuel. You've got to tune up the plane to the maximum. You got to understand how to fly it. And it is not easy. Part of the reason I do this is because I'm trying to learn how to fly my own G650, folks. I've been given a specialized aircraft just like you, and I'm trying to learn how to fly it, all right? And part of the way that I do that is to free flow in thought, right? To allow myself, no matter what you think, all right, that, less and less is coming into my radar screen. What you think about it. What's most important is that I not be afraid to free flow whatever thoughts I have. And that is part of a healthy thing that I believe is stifling the world. I always go back to Sir Ken Robinson. If you have not seen Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk, go see it, and he will explain to you why the education system in this world is crippled, and he'll tell you the story of Gillian Lynn, who got in trouble when she was young in school, and they took her to a therapist and the therapist says, "Mrs. Lynn, your daughter's not sick, she's a dancer. Take her to a dance school." And she went on to have this beautiful career. She was telling the world, hey, I'm not a academic, sit in the chair, learn this bullshit student. I am a dancer. And these children come into us. They come into the world, they already know what they want. They can't communicate that well. And we're communicating to them all the time. But if you can settle into understanding what your child is trying to tell you. My ex-wife Sherry is a wonderful, wonderful teacher, all right? And she wanted to be a homeschool mommy from the beginning. And I thought it was kind of strange. I'd never been around that kind of stuff. But what I learned from her was that you can pay attention to what your child is trying to tell you, and then respond to them and what they're asking for. Try to shape their interests, their passions, and what they know about. I remember when our daughter Ellie was, 6 or 7 years old. She comes to me and says, "Steve, we got to buy a piano." And I was like, "A piano? What? None of us play the piano." And she goes, "No, Ellie has an aptitude for it. We need to get her a piano." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" She's 6. I mean, I got to go spend $700 on a piano. But Sherry knew, okay? She knew. And the next thing you know, Ellie spends every day at that piano, learning the piano. She loves the piano. She tried to help me learn, chopsticks and different little tunes. I couldn't keep up with her. She knew what she wanted, all right? And her mother nurtured her in that direction. It was beautiful. And today she's, in my opinion, she might argue with me, but Ellie is a concert level pianist, if she really wanted to put her mind to it. She has an intuition about that instrument. And I admire her more than she really knows. I love you, Ella Bell. But the point is that these children understand when they come in, they have the divine spark. It takes them a while to learn how to talk and walk and function. And so they're constantly bombarded with education and training and rules and what's right and wrong, what's safe and not safe, and all this stuff. When really we should be learning more from them than them constantly having to learn from us. And Sir Ken Robinson talks about it in terms of trying to strip mine a certain commodity out of the left brain. out of the left side of the brain, and not paying any attention to the right brain intuitive, not really, and telling them, no, you don't have an imaginary friend. What I have found in my forbidden discussions, talking to groups of people every week for the last 2 years, just about, what I have found is that when I tell them a lot of these unusual things that have happened in my life, my real, genuine human being experiences, they come out and tell me all sorts of personal things that they've never told anyone. And this has led me to believe that the right brain intuitives are the most oppressed people on the planet. And it's pretty much every one of us. All right. Every culture around, it seems like, certainly in the West, has strived to shut down the right brain intuitive. Dancing, chanting, meditation, yoga, knowledge of plant medicines, all sorts of techniques that make one go out of their mind. All right. Are you out of your mind? That's what they say. Actually, being out of your mind simply means, in many cases, I've drank alcohol to the point in my life where I was out of my mind. But what I mean to say is going out of your mind means going out of your left brain logical and letting that rest. And allowing that small, still voice, that right brain intuitive, that strong feminine energy, a chance to come forward and tell you things. Albert Einstein didn't come up with much of anything until he was, a lowly patent clerk that stayed in this, boring job, and he was allowed to think. All right, and these children that come in, they're not allowed to just think and dream and play nearly enough. They're not given validation for their original thought. All right, and this is what changes the world. Being taught, how to go from point A to point B to point C, and learning the rules and regulations. Those things are good, But like many things in this world right now, this pendulum has swung way to the left brain logical and not nearly enough to the right brain intuitive. And bringing that balance, folks, is what brings a harmonious vibration in the human being. It's when you bring that balance and you're not so left brain dominant all the time, you have a very pleasurable type of sensation that comes on. You're, in my opinion, less inclined to intoxicate yourself with drugs and alcohol. You're less inclined to be angry or anxious or depressed. You're less inclined to be a lot of those negative things. And it's my layman's belief that a lot of what ills our world is this terrible imbalance, this left brain dominant, constant goal-oriented, me and mine type mentality, and not nearly enough of this intuitive quality that we have, this divine spark, this little light that shines, doing things that we instinctively know are correct rather than logically we're taught are correct. And there's a big difference, folks. And we do not feel permission to be ourselves. We do not feel, because we'll feel like we're alienated and we'll be labeled as weird or crazy or undesirable or any of those things that are tremendously painful to us. All right? And if and the message here is if you are a right brain intuitive and you produce any kind of original thought, we're going to cause you emotional pain. And if you show us that side of yourself, we're going to stick a label on you and we're going to call you crazy and we're going to hurt you emotionally. Emotional death is I think, every bit as painful as physical pain. Emotional pain is what we're frightened of, and so we hide ourselves. We hide a lot of our intuitive qualities, and we just try to follow the rules and be normal. All right, and I, for one, am tired of that, as you can plainly see. All right, I'm tired of that, and I'm gonna try to let my little original, authentic, genuine light shine any old way it comes out. And it may be like a flickering little flashlight, it's trying to find its way, trying to open up and shine fully, right? But that is my exercise. And in doing so, it is my hope that it'll help others have permission to let their light shines as well, and not be afraid of what the crowd thinks, all right? Because that, folks, is what's going to save this whole exercise called humanity, all right? That's what's going to help us to bring about a well-balanced world. It's a well-balanced mind. It's out of balance now. Any of these power structures, pick one. They've gone way out of balance. And pharmaceuticals, military industrial, energy, education, any of these institutions where they built this power structure, and you've got to fall in line and do it their way, and so that they can make the money. And make no mistake, any of those is about the money. The education system, you say, well, that's not about money. That's about teaching people. The Teachers Union of the United States, they control about $1 trillion, all right? And they want to keep controlling that $1 trillion, all right? Every time little Johnny or Susie raises their hand in class and says present, they get paid. That's why they call the roll every day. It's not because they want to make sure, you're there for your own education. It's because the payroll from the government depends on each child being there and present every day. And they control the type of education goes in. Why in the world do we live on a planet that's full of plants, and we are not taught from birth what these plants do? All right? Why? All right? Because they don't want you to know. They want you to buy their stuff that they derive from the plants. And don't get me started. Anyway, let's see. What else do I got? What do I got? Alienation. That's what I'm talking about. Alienation. And we're alienated from a lot of stuff. I listened to this guy, what's his name? Alan Gabor or something like that. And he was talking about alienation. And he talked about 4 different things that we are alienated from. We're alienated from nature, okay? That's one thing we're alienated from. And I'm reminded of the woman whose her baby was colicked and it cried, 23 hours a day. This baby cried, and the doctor said, well, there's nothing you can do. It's colicked, right? And you just gotta grow out of it, all right? That was the answer. And so she's, carrying this baby all the time, crying. It's driving her out of her mind. And one day she walks out the kitchen door and decides to take the baby out in the yard. And there was 2 important things. She was barefooted when she walked out the door. And also the baby was pressed right up skin to skin on her chest, all right? And the minute she walked into the yard, into the grass, the baby stopped crying. Now, this was monumental, okay? Because that baby never stopped crying, all right? And all of a sudden, the baby stopped crying, went to sleep, all right? She was like, wow, that's amazing. And, she walks around the yard barefoot with the baby next to her skin. And then she walks back into the house to go put the baby in the crib. The minute she walks back in the house, baby starts crying again, all right? So she walks back out into the yard, baby stops crying, all right? And so what she connected, and I think she gives a TED talk about this. I saw it somewhere, but basically it's about earthing or grounding, and that we have a need to be connected to the earth, right? And that's one dramatic example, but it is so important that we are out in nature. We're marching about the grounds, breathing deeply, turning our face up to the sun, touching trees, sitting, in quiet meditation in the garden, just allowing plants to talk to you. Plants have consciousness, Everything has consciousness, it seems, because there's order. Right? There's an order even to solid material. The Indians used to say that even the rocks have spirit in them. And I'm more and more inclined to believe that. Because if you get a physicist and take down those molecules all the way in that rock, in that dirt, and whatever it is, all molecules, all atoms are held together by an organizing creator force, right? And it's just a bunch of energy spinning around, keeping the matter together. And that's all it is. It's all about vibration and frequency. So there's a spirit to everything. And our connection to the natural environment is so important. And that's what Howard Butt was talking about when he felt connected to God. What he's talking about is that important creator force. And so more and more, especially if you live in the city, someplace like Houston, Texas, part of the reason I was getting sick and depressed there is because I didn't have that much connection with nature. All right, and it just seemed I was bombarded by the city, and I don't know, I don't blame it all on that, but I was a part of it. And I just come from Cusco, Peru, where I was, in nature all the time. And so we're alienated from nature. We're also alienated from people. All right, and we've given these norms and customs. Like part of the reason that men in America behave the way they do, which came from a French nobleman sent some letters to the New World to his son and said, "Son, look, you're not in France anymore." All right, this is back, I think, in the 1700s, and these letters were published in the 1800s in the Boston Herald. But it was a series of letters from father to son saying, "Look, you're in the New World, and you're not to behave like you were in France. You keep these heathens at a distance. They're not Frenchmen. You don't hug and kiss them. You extend your hand and shake their hand, but you don't let them have access to your personal space. And you never cry, never ever cry, and to show your weakness." And it was all these different things that were then incorporated into the norms of our society, keeping us alienated and distant from other people, especially with men. There's this very distant way that we behave with each other. It's different when you travel around the world and go to other countries, much warmer and more friendly. But we're alienated from our work in many ways. We're shoved in, strip mined for the left brain logical, and we go into these careers that make us some money, but for which we have no passion. We are alienated from it. We go to this work, we drag ourselves in, and we are not present. We don't like it, and it causes us to die inside. It's covering us up, and so we're alienated from our work, and we're also alienated from ourselves. All right, and we're alienated from ourselves in that, if you ever had a gut feeling or an instinct that you should do something, and then you didn't do it, and then later you regretted not doing it, what that is that you are alienated from your own intuition. You are alienated, and you've been taught since birth that you are to follow the rules of the game, that you are supposed to do what they tell you, not what you instinctively know. All right, and your inclination may be to let your light shine, to talk to the world on some television device and be crazy and off the wall, and allowing your personal thoughts to come into the airspace. I mean, normal people don't do this, right? Normal people follow the rules and draw within the lines, and but you become alienated, and that's really what we're talking about in this whole thing, is being alienated from oneself, not trusting one's own intuition, not being guided by your own internal navigation. Sure, you take the education, you read the books, you listen to the professor's lectures, you listen to the sermons, you understand what everybody else thinks, but then you must take that and fly your own plane. All right, you take all the education, but once you have control, and once you fly that thing, and you know how all the buttons work, and how to crank it up and take off by yourself, you fly that G650 in your own direction, in your own instinctive way. and you become intuitively, you become, the plane becomes a part of you, and you get to fly it any old way you want to. And that's really the ultimate exercise, isn't it? Come into the world covered up, come into the world completely shining and uncovered. Go through all this covering up of, your instinct, your intuition, and how you think it should be, and you get hobbled. Your horse gets hobbled, and then, but the exercise is to unpeel, uncover, and to get to the essence of who you are, the divine spark that's in you, and that's a lifelong learning process. And if you get tired and you don't want to do it, hey, that's your business. People reach only the level that they aspire to, all right? And if you do not inspire to go any further than making a little money and sitting around drinking booze and watching the football game and relaxing, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, all right? But I believe that there's a lot more juice out of life, and your ability to be creative, your ability to have this divine creator spark is always in a developmental stage, reaching higher and higher to try to be the best that you can be. And that's what I'll leave you with today. The reason I tell you this is because I love you very, very much. And I want to pour out whatever authentically comes to me. It's good for me. I hope it's good for you. I love you. I hope you have a great day. And, go out there and let your little light shine just all over the place. It's Stevie the God here from the banks of the Guadalupe River. It's Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. And